Hello, this is Professor James Strickler, and this is a course in American government. This lesson is from Unit 4, the Legislative Branch. It's Lesson 6, about the committee process. In this lesson, you'll learn about bills being referred to committees, about committees holding hearings, committees marking up bills, committees reporting bills, and committees tabling bills. Now, the context for this lesson is this diagram. Now, this looks really scary, I'm sure, at this point. And we're going to slowly build this diagram over the next few lessons, but I just wanted to show you to begin with where we're eventually going to end up. Now, this diagram is not as scary as it looks. In fact, it's really just an illustration of the old Schoolhouse Rock song about I'm Just a Bill. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. It's that song diagrammed out. So let's begin our diagram by keeping in mind the end goal, and that is to create a law. We're talking about, in general, the legislative process here. In other words, the legislature, the United States Congress, trying to accomplish its purpose of creating legislation, in other words, creating laws, and the process they go through to accomplish that. As we talk about this process, it's important to keep in mind that there are two separate houses involved. There's the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. And they need to both be involved in this process as we go through to eventually create the law. Now, a law can start either place. A law may be proposed in either the Senate or in the House of Representatives. Now, there's one exception to that we've talked about earlier in this unit, and that is that the Constitution says that laws dealing with the raising of revenue must be initiated in the House of Representatives. But other than that one constitutional exception, laws can be either introduced in the Senate or introduced in the House. When a law is merely a proposed law, we don't call it a law yet. We call it a bill. After a bill has been proposed in either the House or the Senate, it is then sent to a committee to be considered. The committee is going to take a more careful look at the proposal, whatever it is, and then make a recommendation to the entire chamber, whether it be the House from a House committee or the Senate from a Senate committee. The way that these bills are proposed to begin with is a member of the Senate must stand up and propose a bill, and then it gets sent to the Senate committee, or a member of the House has to stand up and propose a House bill, and then it gets sent to a House committee. And it's the leadership that decides what committee it will be sent to. And in some cases, a law may be proposed that could potentially go to more than one committee. And because of the subject matter, it crosses over the different topics that the committees cover. And so the leadership has to make a decision of which committee should get it. And that's in and of itself is a strategic decision when it's decided what committee a particular law will be referred to. Because one committee, the Speaker, say, of the House may already know, will really love this law, while another one may hate it. And so by sending it to one committee or the other, the Speaker can make it more or less likely that it will actually become a law eventually. So the first step after a law is proposed is that it is referred as a bill to a committee for them to carefully consider. And it's that process that we're going to be really talking about in this lesson. The committee process involves several steps. The first of those steps is to hold a hearing. The hearings are designed to have an opportunity for people to come in and testify before the committee about the proposed law, whatever it may be. So it's the committee that's doing the listening. That's why it's called a hearing. These committee hearings are held usually in the United States Capitol and in special committee hearing rooms. And there's oftentimes an audience there to watch, and they set up a table at the front where various people come in and speak about the law that's been proposed. In general, what they're looking for is experts to come in and provide their testimony, to essentially explain to the committee whether the proposed law is a good or a bad idea, and why it's a good or bad idea. The next step of the committee process is called marking up the bill. When a committee marks up the bill, they get together for a meeting of just the committee members and their staffs. And they look through the bill and try to decide what things in it are good or bad, oftentimes based upon the expert testimony that they gathered during the hearing phase. They then, based on their own opinions and what they learned from other experts, decide what changes should be made to the bill. And then they go about making those changes. Back in a time before computers and electronic publishing and that sort of thing, they would literally get out pens and paper and mark up the bill, draw lines through things, write notes in the margin, things like that. That's why it's called marking up a bill. That they're going through the process of making changes to it that the committee would prefer. The next step of the committee process is to report the bill back to the entire chamber. Reporting a bill sends the bill from the committee, the small group of members of that chamber, to the full chamber to be considered. So whenever you hear about a bill being reported, that's what it's talking about, is the bill coming out of a committee and going to either the entire Senate or the entire House of Representatives for them to now deal with and potentially eventually vote on to try to make it a law. Now, along the way through this process, as the committee is holding hearings, marking up the bill, and eventually reporting it, at any given time, they could choose to table the bill. Tabling a bill refers to the idea of, imagine you're really busy and you have a desk covered with things that you need to get done and there isn't enough room to work. You may well take something that you don't want to deal with right then and turn it around and set it on some other table, kind of out of the way. The idea is that you're going to eventually get back to that bill at some time in the future while dealing with other things in the near term. But the truth is, most bills that are tabled are usually left there to die. The committee never returns to them. So tabling a bill is effectively the same as just throwing it into the trash. Tabling of a bill can happen at any time during the committee process. That's why now I've drawn this box all the way around these steps so that you'll recognize that the tabling can happen anywhere. A committee is originally referred to a bill, and they can immediately decide to table it, not even hold hearings on it in the first place if none of them like it. Or maybe they hold hearings and then they decide based on the testimony given there that the bill's a bad idea, they table it then. Or maybe they try marking up the bill, making changes, and in that process realize that it's just not workable. And at that point they table it. If at any time before reporting the bill they decide that this isn't worth pursuing, they table it. That effectively kills the bill. That's why in that Schoolhouse Rock song that I referred to at the beginning of this lesson, it explains that most bills die in committee. Very few make it all the way through this process to then be reported to the entire chamber, whether it be the House or the Senate. So the tabling of a bill can happen at anywhere during the process, and that's important to keep in mind. In fact, probably most bills that are proposed don't even get hearings, much less get markups, or even get referred eventually to the entire chamber. It's a rare bill that makes it all the way through that process. So now let's review what we learned in this lesson. Where is a bill sent after it's been proposed? Is it sent to the other House of Congress to be considered? Is it sent to the floor of the entire chamber to be considered? Is it sent to the president, or is it sent to a committee? A newly proposed bill is sent to a committee within that chamber for them to review and possibly make changes to. Why do the committees then hold hearings? Is it to allow expert testimony about the bills that have been proposed to them? Is it to assess the final vote on a bill? Is it to entertain C-SPAN viewers with their hearings? Or is it to promote passage of a bill? Hearings are primarily held to allow experts to come and testify so that the members of the committee will know better whether the bill is a good or bad idea. What does it mean to mark up a bill? Does it mean to appeal to the Supreme Court? Does it mean to determine the bill's true costs? Does it mean to complain about the bill in public? Or is it mean to make changes to the bill? When a committee marks up a bill, they make changes to it. What does it mean to report a bill? Does it mean to assess the constitutionality of the bill? Does it mean to assess the costs of the bill? Does it mean to send the bill to the entire chamber to be considered? Or does it mean to send it to the FBI for them to preview it and decide whether it's legal or not? Reporting a bill means to send it to the entire chamber to be reviewed by them, to decide whether or not they eventually want to pass it. What does it usually mean to table a bill? Does it mean to open it up for amendments? Or to prepare to apply it to the masses? Or does it mean to move it to the front of a line? Or does it mean to throw it in the trash? Generally, tabling a bill means to throw it in the trash. They're just trying to get rid of it and move on to other things. All right, that does it for this lesson. The next lesson from Unit 4 will be Lesson 7, about the process that the House goes through once a bill has been reported to them.